Check out this super interesting video of Tommy Robinson actually saying that he doesn't agree with Israel's recent deal with Hamas and the ceasefire, and that Israel did not go strong and hard enough against Hamas. Look, Tommy knows the dangers of Islamification, as does Israel. It's a tough situation, but listen to what he says right here.
You're here, as we mentioned, on the day that we are marking 2 years since this terrible disaster, 2 years of a war, but you're also here during days of seeing our hostages coming home, that feeling of maybe we're at the beginning of a new era. How do you feel about this?
The truth, I'd be absolutely gutted if I was Israeli or Jewish. I'd be gutted at the men who have just been released. I have a friend, Kay Wilson, now goes by the name Tao. She was butchered 13 times with a machete, and her friend was murdered in front of her in a terrorist attack in Israel. They've just released her murderer. So I understand. I watched the emotional scenes of those hostages being released, but at the same time, the problem's not going anywhere. The problem of jihad, the problem of Hamas, the problem of Hezbollah, none of these problems that surround Israel are going anywhere. The only language they understand is strength, and I'm glad that under your current Conservative government, they have not backed down and not pandered to the United Nations, to Britain, to Macron. They actually just laugh at them, which is how they should. They have the support of Donald Trump, which is all that actually matters in the world.
You mentioned Donald Trump. When you see him, standing there in Knesset saying, "That's it, it's done, it's peace, it's a new era," you have a feeling you want to tell him what?
It's not peace. You're never going to have peace when you're surrounded by jihad. You are still surrounded by people who wish to wipe Israel off the face of the map. You're still surrounded by them.
Israel and the West.
Israel and the West. No, I see Israel. If Israel falls, we all fall. If Israel falls, we all fall. Now, on October 8th, Hamas made it very clear. Israel's not the target. London, New York is. I understand that. Whether it be Hamas, whether it be Hezbollah, whether it be Boko Haram, whether it be ISIS, all of these groups run off the same ideology, which is for Islamic supremacy and domination worldwide. That's not just about Israel. Mein Kampf is 7% Jew hatred. The Quran's 11%. Muhammad hated the Jews. What would I do if I was Israel? And I look at the previous wars, the 6-day war, the 7-day war. I look at that and I see that the Islamic leaders of the Islamic nations surrounding them actually said, we're taking your women and we're taking your children as slaves. We're taking them as war booty. So they've been in this position where if they're not strong, they're wiped off the face of the map. Their daughters are being raped. So what do you want them to do? You're fighting. Do people even understand who Hamas are? Hamas are ISIS. They are ISIS. The Hamas, and I try and draw this comparison to people in England to understand. England, Scotland, on the border. Scotland elect a government, because this is what the Palestinians done, with a majority population. There were two different parties, both were terrorist groups, but they elected Hamas. And on Hamas, in their manifesto, it says the final day of judgment does not come until every Jew is dead. Not every Zionist, every Jew. So imagine Scotland elected a government that says the final day of judgment does not come until every Englishman is dead. And then that government, with funding coming from other jihadist scumbag shitholes, that government used their money to then fire rockets every day at our families in England. What would we be doing? What would we be saying to our government? Go and get them, bomb them. And then they come over the border and they rape and pillage 1,400 people. And they're all cheering about it. And they're not just there cheering about it, but in every Western liberal democracy in the whole world, Iranian proxy armies are waving flags and celebrating it as well. So I look at all of that and I just think, if they were successful and they obliterated Israel, do you really think they're stopping at Israel? You don't see that they're coming straight for Europe? Hamas said on the October 8th, the day after October 7th, Israel's not our target. Rome, London. Okay? People need to understand. I understand the mindset of the jihadists. I understand the Islamic mindset. So I get it. Yeah? Most people don't. Most people don't. And not just they don't, they're so thick. So
we've seen massive protests.
But I haven't had no money off Mossad. So if they want to give me money, and I get so much shit for it anyway. Most of my shit comes from FNATs, comes from the far right, and all of it is that and I see some of the comments, and I just think, Jesus, he works for Israel. I don't work for Israel. Oh, Israel first. No, England first. Yeah, England will always be first for me. England is first. Britain is first. But I do sympathise with the situation Israel in. They're a liberal democracy surrounded by totalitarian Islamic Sharia-driven shitholes.
People like you have talked about this strange alliance between the radical left and Islamists. And I think the only explanation, the only sensible one is it's a sort of marriage of convenience. The radical left and the Islamists want to see the Western world fall. So they're united. That's the one thing that they agree on.
What did they do in Lebanon? What did they do in Iran? Exactly the same. They come together to overthrow the status quo because the Marxists want to break down the whole system. Who can they align with to do it? And not just that, they all hate the Jews. No, it's not just that. It's not just about convenience. The left hate the Jews. The middle class hate the Jews. Yeah, not the working class in the UK. Go to a working class estate. Yeah? We don't hate Jews, but the education system and what's infiltrated the education system. Like the prison system can't deal with Islam in jail. Well, the universities can't deal with Islam in universities. They should just shut down the Islamic Society. But the Islamic Society, usually funded by Qatar or Iran, is promoting and propaganda against Jews, against Israel. Israel are losing this war. Yeah, not the war in Israel. They're losing the war of the minds of Western countries because the populations are being targeted with proxy war coming with massive funding. And do you know what they're now doing, which people don't even see, is Qatar used to fund £750 million. Qatar would fund this country. They'd fund mosques. They funded all the segregation and separation in Paris and in these Islamic ghettos was funded by Qatar. But they would fund all these things. And the way to convert and Islamize Europe used to be through mosques and dawah centres and conversions. Now it's through influencers. So a lot of the influencers you'll see on the right, whether it be Sneeko, you know Sneeko?
Of course.
You know he's gay, yeah?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay, so there's an interview of Sneeko and he's sitting doing an interview and he says, he says, when I was about 17, 18, I weren't sure if I was gay or not. You're gay, mate. If you're not sure if you're gay, Sneeko, yeah? But Sneeko and all these they all convert to Islam. And there's a massive trend going on right now. Boxers are doing it. It furthers their career. Who's in charge of the boxing? Saudi Arabia, all these Islamic nations. It furthers them in their career. But all these influencers doing the same. Yeah? The Sneeko went and converted and then it was a very high-end video going to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj, all this bullshit. Mate, you'll get thrown off a rooftop if you were yourself. But I'm watching all that. They're funding and they're winning through the influencers who are then promoting hatred against Israel, against Jews. And do you know why? Do you know why? Because it's easy. It's easy to be against Israel. No one's going to punch you up when you walk down the street. If you're pro-Israel, if you're pro-Hamas or pro-Palestine, no one's going to beat you up. You come out and start telling the truth or speaking up for Israel, everyone wants to get you. It's a difficult position, and I don't expect most cowards to take that position. I just tell the truth, and I don't really care. And that doesn't mean Israel's perfect at all, far from it. Yeah. But when the American government were dropping bombs and invading every country, yeah, I didn't blame every American person. I accepted that Biden was a piece of shit who was a puppet for many other warmongering groups. I accept that there's problems within Israel, as there's problems within Britain. That doesn't mean you have to hate every Jew. Yeah? The majority of Jews I know are great people, and they love Britain. Any of the Jews I know in Britain are great. You want them all to leave, take all the money with them as well. Want to leave us with loads of bloody Somalis. Great choice. I tell you what, get all the highly educated Jews to leave and we'll import a load more fucking medieval people from the backward societies. No. So, I do get a lot of backlash for speaking up on behalf of Israel. I've been to Israel. I don't know if you saw, when I went to Israel, I paid young Arabs, Muslims, and I paid them to take me to a Fatah-controlled refugee camp in Bethlehem. So I went there, I risked my life. I could have got killed. If they'd have known who I was, I'd be dead. Yeah. And I went in and spent a day in a refugee camp. And when I spent that day in, I wanted to see from their perspective. The gentleman who took me around was a 4th generation refugee. And as he took me around, he said, Tommy, he didn't know who I was, but he said, my children will be 5th generation, their children will be 6th generation, and theirs will be 7th generation. We're never getting out of here. The reason being, we, in Palestine, from Free Palestine, have had 2 times as much money than Germany had after the World War. And we all still live in squalor. Because the money doesn't go to us. It goes to war. And we'll forever be kept like this to benefit, because they bring European politicians in. Do you know why I left that camp, that refugee camp? I wanted to give them money. I'm one of the most strongest advocates against Hamas and against Palestinian Authority, and I wanted to give them money. It works. And I said to my mate Dean, because a lad I went to school with, black lad I went to school with, I said, bruv, I'll do anything to get my kids out of poverty, and I'll do anything for giving my kids a good future. And what that gentleman told me in that camp was that the Palestinian, I said, who oppresses you? And I expected him to say Israel, yeah? And he said, the Palestinian Authority. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the Palestinian Authority pay anyone here. If you go and kill an Israeli, so then I said to him, so if someone leaves this camp and murders a Jew in Israel, he said, no, an Israeli. It doesn't matter if it's a Jew or not, yeah? I was like, okay. So someone leaves here and murders an Israeli, they get money for the rest of their life from the Palestinian Authority.
Pay to slay, it's called pay to slay, it's a monthly stipend.
And
it's real, yeah.
No, and then I looked up the Palestinian Authority, and I looked, it's our money. It's British taxpayers' money. So I thought, we're paying tax to pay people from this refugee camp to go out. And then I viewed, hold on, everything I thought I knew. So some of these people are just simply mercenaries. Maybe they don't even believe in Islam. Maybe this isn't jihad. Maybe they're just killing to get their family out of this shithole. Yeah. But I thought a lot. And then when I went to the Golan Heights when I was there. And I stood on the Golan Heights and bombs were going off in Syria at the time. 2015 was it? I can't remember. Bombs were going off. And I said to some Muslim lad, because every Muslim I met, I wanted to ask them what they thought. And I said to a Muslim lad, how happy are you living in Israel? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, how difficult is it for you as a Muslim? He looked at me like I was an idiot. He said, I pray 5 times a day, mate. Yeah? He goes, I've got everything I want here. He said, where do you think I want to be over there? He pointed to where the bombs are going off. He goes, Israel's okay. And I didn't realise that there's 20% are Muslim, living happily. And as we went through, there's about 1,000 young Arabs, and they're doing camel racing. I spoke about this earlier. There's about 1,000 young, and I've got a T-shirt that says I love Israel. Yeah? And I say, pull the car over, stop the car. We're going over there, yeah? And as we're walking over there, I see lads with Kalashnikovs, machine guns. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen? I've got an I love Israel T-shirt on, yeah? I'm about the bloody eyelid. And I've walked into them all and I'm saying, all right, lads, Trump had just got elected. So it's 2016. Yeah. Trump had just got elected. I said, what do you think of Donald Trump? And they said, America needs strong man. This is all these Muslims said. I'm thinking everything I thought
because the Muslim world generally respects strong leaders.
Muslim men generally respect. Do you know when I walk through Luton, I have some of their main gangsters coming over and they put their hand out. And he goes, Tommy, and he shakes my hand like that. He goes, I don't like you, but I respect you. He said, you stand up for what you believe in, yeah? The only language Islam understands, I learnt this growing up, is that. The only language the Muslim gangs understand is, we're not bothered by you. If you show them one bit of weakness, they will bully and run all over you. Yeah? I learned that as a kid. You can't do it. You can't show them weakness. So, but what I realised when I was in Israel, everything I thought I knew was the opposite. So then I come back from there and then I have some blue-haired clown telling me about Free Palestine. And I'm just like, well, have you ever been there? Have you ever been and spoke to any of the refugees? Ever spoke to any Muslims who live in Israel, happily live in Israel? None of them. They think we hear about all this, what do they call it? A thingy state, Israel.
An apartheid state.
An apartheid state. Well, tell a Muslim politician in Israel that it's an apartheid state. I didn't realise, so as I looked and learned a lot, so I think most people talk they believe the bullshit and they look at Pallywood. I don't believe anything I watch, it's impossible to. It's impossible to. What I do believe and what I know is that Hamas belong in the 7th century. Yeah? And that mindset belongs in the 7th century. And Israel, when I went there, was a beautiful country and they're not scared. And they have to be fearless. And if they don't fight, they'll be gone. They'll be gone. There'll be no Israel. There'll be no Jews. So that's where I stand on it. And I don't care how many people that upsets. No, I'm not being paid a shekel for it either. Yeah? I just don't give a shit. I'll speak my mind on any of my beliefs and always have. Now, yeah, and I'm a friend to you see the Jews in Britain? You see when that started happening with Hamas? I think it was important that the British men stood up and said, we stand with you. Yeah? This pretending that the British public hate Jews. Yeah? No, the middle class, educated university types are coming out indoctrinated from an education system. You used to worry about your kids going to university and getting hooked on drugs. Now you've got to worry whether they're going to come out a tranny or a jihadist.
Wow. Remarkable video here with Vice Grad Tommy Robinson giving a history of the region, explaining Israel's right to exist, but not only the right to exist, the right to defend itself, and not only the right to defend itself, but also the moral obligation and utmost responsibility of Israel to defend itself against enemies, against Islamification. Right? Tommy sees what happened to Luton. He talks about it all the time. He saw his hometown has been beset by illegal immigration, mostly Islamists. He talks about how there are no Jews left in Luton. He bemoans that. Tommy actually is sad. He is on record saying he is sad that he has seen British Jewish people leave Britain to go to Israel because they just were being harassed by Islamic gangs, by Islamic this and that. Just sad. Sad for Britain. Tommy said it himself. And the idea that the Islamification, this unstoppable force, it took over Paris, it took over all of Germany. Tommy sees it happening already in London. And he's one of the last true warriors in I would say beyond the UK at this point, in all of Europe, one of the only people who's fighting the good fight, trying to protect his homeland, and basically trying to get the world to wake up. And that's why he has such a hardline stance against this, and especially when it comes to Israel. He plays no games. He affirms Israel's right and obligation to defend itself against all elements of Islamification. And he sees it happening in his hometown, Luton, for the broader London, England, and the United Kingdom. And he's trying to push back before it is too late.